Hello and welcome to Sleepy Science Story. This is your time to slow down, to let the noise of the day soften into silence, and to drift gently toward dreams. Tonight, we're going to travel farther than anyone has ever truly gone, not through rockets or starships, but through imagination. We'll wander to the outermost edge of the solar system, to a place so distant that sunlight arrives as little more than a whisper. This is the Oort Cloud, a ghostly halo of icy wanderers circling our sun like forgotten memories. Together, we'll explore its mysteries, the frozen comets, the ancient dust, the quiet gravity that still ties them to home. I do hope this story isn't so interesting that it keeps you awake, but if it does, at least your dreams will be filled with stars, ice, and wonder. A gentle like and a soft tap on subscribe would mean the world. If you could rise above the sun and look down upon the solar system, you would see a glowing nest of motion. Planets orbit in predictable grace. Comets sweep through on glittering paths, and beyond them, the light fades until even the warmth seems to forget itself. Out past Neptune and the Kuiper Belt, far beyond where our spacecraft have drifted, lies a realm that is not bright, not busy, but quietly infinite. This is where the Oort Cloud begins, though to call it a beginning is misleading, because here there are no edges, only distance that stretches into silence. The Oort Cloud is not a place of planets or moons or even sunlight. It is a region so vast that our language begins to tremble when trying to measure it. Imagine standing at the center of the solar system, where Earth circles like a delicate blue bead. Now stretch your mind outward, past the giant planets, past the wandering ice of Pluto, until the sun has become no brighter than a distant lantern. You are only halfway there. The Oort Cloud extends trillions of kilometers into the dark, a faint spherical sea of icy bodies surrounding everything we know. It is less a boundary and more a gentle blur between the warmth of home and the cold eternity beyond. Each of those icy bodies is a story. They were born in the earliest days of the solar system when everything was young and wild. Back then, the sun was a newborn fireball wrapped in a swirling disk of dust and gas. From that cloud, the planets grew, gathering matter like children building sandcastles from the same grains. But not all the material joined the dance. Some was flung outward by the violent gravity of the giant planets, hurled so far that it could never return, yet not far enough to escape the sun completely. Those outcasts became the Oort Cloud, a vast collection of frozen debris lingering at the edges of sunlight. They are the wanderers that never found a home, drifting for billions of years in quiet exile. In that remoteness, time slows to a crawl. The orbits of these icy travelers are so immense that a single loop around the sun could take millions of years. From their perspective, the planets and moons near the sun whirl like frantic dancers, while they themselves drift in the deep stillness of cosmic patience. They are old beyond measure, older than the continents, older than the mountains, older even than most of the stars that now share our sky. Each one holds within it the original chemistry of creation, frozen since the dawn of the solar system, preserved perfectly by the endless cold. Out there, sunlight has grown too weak to warm or even to shine. It arrives as a ghostly pulse, spreading so thin that it can no longer cast shadows. The darkness of the Oort Cloud is not the darkness of night, but of distance. It is gentle, velvety, and complete. If you could stand on one of its icy fragments, you would see the sun as a bright pinprick among countless other stars. There would be no sound, no breeze, only the faint pull of gravity reminding you that, even here, you are still bound to home. It is strange to think that this frozen sea marks both an ending and a beginning. It is the outermost whisper of our solar system, yet also the threshold to the wider galaxy. Beyond it lie other stars, other clouds, other families of light and ice. And just as our Oort Cloud extends toward them, theirs stretches toward us, the edges of neighboring systems gently brushing in the infinite dark. The universe does not stop. It only grows quieter. So when you look up at the night sky and wonder where it all ends, remember that it doesn't. It simply fades into calmness, one soft breath at a time, until the stars themselves begin again. If you could drift outward through the solar system like a slow-moving thought, the light around you would begin to change. Near Earth, sunlight is bright and full, warm enough to paint colors and cast shadows. By the time you pass Neptune, that same light has thinned to a faint wash, no brighter than twilight. Keep moving and it begins to dissolve, fading until it feels like a memory more than a glow. Somewhere in that half-light, you begin to enter the domain of the Oort Cloud, a region so remote that the concept of distance almost stops being meaningful. It is the solar system's quiet heartbeat, pulsing just at the edge of nothingness. Here, the sun is not a blazing star, but a pale ember. Its light takes more than half a year to reach these distant travelers, and when it arrives, it is soft as the breath of a candle flickering behind glass. Every particle of dust, every shard of ice, is illuminated only faintly, catching the light for a moment before returning it to darkness. If you could hold out your hand, it would glow for a heartbeat and then vanish into shadow again. This is where light learns humility. It no longer rules the sky, it whispers through it. The Oort Cloud itself is made of countless icy bodies, perhaps trillions, each one the size of a mountain or a small city, yet so far apart that they might never meet. The nearest neighbor to any one of them could be millions of kilometers away. Imagine a field so vast that a single snowflake falls every 1,000 miles, and you will have only begun to understand the spacing. To call it a cloud is poetic, but misleading. It is less like a fog and more like a mist of stones scattered across an ocean of void. They drift slowly, barely moving against the black backdrop, each held by the sun's gravity but only just. These frozen wanderers are time travelers. The material that forms them dates back to the earliest days of the solar system, when dust and ice clung together in the protoplanetary disk. While the inner planets burned and changed, these tiny worlds escaped the heat and settled into cold storage. Their surfaces hold the fingerprints of creation itself: water, ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide, and the faintest traces of organic molecules that once swirled in the same cloud that built the Earth. Each is a sealed container of ancient chemistry, frozen before life even began. If we could reach one and melt its surface, we might find the ingredients that shape the oceans and the air we breathe. The cold out here is absolute in its patience. Temperatures hover only a few degrees above the point where all motion stops, yet the quiet is not lifeless. In that stillness, atoms vibrate just enough to keep their stories intact. Time does not erode them, and sunlight does not bleach them. They persist, unchanged for billions of years, like notes in a symphony too slow for human hearing. Occasionally, a passing star or the slow turning of the galaxy disturbs this balance. A faint tug, a nudge of gravity, and one of these icy relics begins to move. It starts a long, inward journey toward the warmth of the inner solar system, falling across light years of space until it becomes what we see from Earth as a comet. In that moment, something ancient awakens. The sunlight that once barely touched it now heats its surface, boiling away its ices and forming a glowing tail. To those of us watching from below, it looks like a miracle, but to the Oort Cloud, it is simply one of its children coming home for a brief visit. Most of the time, though, the Oort Cloud remains utterly still. Nothing breaks its silence except the slow orbit of its countless inhabitants, circling unseen around the sun. They do not collide, they do not shine, they simply exist, suspended between gravity and freedom. From afar, it would look like a thin, spherical halo of frost surrounding our entire solar system. It is the sun's faintest whisper into the cosmos, a final reminder that even in darkness, something remains tethered to the light. If you listen closely to the imagination of the universe, you might almost hear it. The quiet rustle of frozen bodies turning in space, the soundless shimmer of dust catching starlight, the delicate hum of distance stretching beyond comprehension. Out here, at the edge of everything, even silence has texture. It feels like the pause between heartbeats, like the moment before sleep when the world grows still. And perhaps that is what the Oort Cloud truly is. Not an edge or a wall, but a cosmic sigh, a boundary made of patience. The solar system does not end here. It simply falls asleep, wrapped in its own frozen breath, dreaming of light that will never quite reach it. If the Oort Cloud could dream, it would dream in slow spirals of light and motion. Nothing here moves quickly. Every orbit takes longer than time feels like it should allow. A single journey around the sun could span 1,000,000 years, so long that mountains rise and vanish, so long that continents shift and stars themselves drift slightly from their places in the sky. These icy wanderers live in a rhythm that is almost eternal. They circle quietly in the dark, guided by a gravity so faint that even the smallest whisper from a passing star can change everything. The Oort Cloud is delicate, not in the sense of fragility but in the precision of its balance. The sun still claims it, but only just. Each icy body floats at the edge of being unbound, a loyal servant that might, at any moment, be persuaded to leave. When a nearby star glides past, its gravity brushes these distant travelers like wind stirring a dandelion field. Some are nudged inward, beginning an immense journey that will one day turn them into comets. Others are pushed outward, slipping quietly into interstellar space to drift between the stars forever. Each encounter writes and rewrites the edges of the solar system, keeping the Oort Cloud in a constant slow dance of loss and renewal. Every comet that visits the inner planets begins as one of these frozen exiles. Perhaps it was resting for eons in the darkness when a gentle pull shifted its orbit. The change might have been small, just enough to tilt its path closer to the Sunday. At first, nothing happens. The comet moves slowly, far too distant for sunlight to do more than brush its icy crust. But as it inches inward through space, the sun begins to wake it. The frozen gases within start to warm and expand, pushing outwards in plumes that glow softly against the dark. By the time the comet nears the inner planets, it has become a radiant traveler, trailed by a luminous tail that stretches for millions of kilometers. That tail, the one we see and marvel at from Earth, is only the surface of its story. Most of the comet's life remains invisible, lived out in the quiet outer reaches of the Oort Cloud. For every one that falls toward the sun, trillions remain behind, waiting, suspended in stillness. Some will never move again, their orbits so perfectly balanced that they will spend all eternity circling unseen. Others will one day awaken and light the skies of future worlds, bearing with them the ancient chemistry of creation. In a way, each comet is a messenger, carrying a frozen letter from the beginning of the solar system to whatever eyes may still be watching. When the comet completes its long loop and returns to the cold, it often breaks apart, leaving fragments behind. Some of these fragments scatter across the void, but many fall back into the slow orbiting sea of the Oort Cloud, joining the billions of others that have done the same. The cloud is a kind of cosmic memory, continually reshaped by what it sends away and what it takes back. It is not static. It breathes, in its own glacial way, expanding and contracting as the sun moves through the galaxy. Our entire solar system drifts around the Milky Way like a leaf in a vast current. With each passing of nearby stars, with each turn of the galactic arm, the Oort Cloud is stirred and shifted. Some astronomers even believe that a few of its distant members were never ours to begin with. They might have come from other stars, flung loose in ancient encounters and captured by the sun's gravity. If that is true, then the Oort Cloud is not simply ours. It is a gathering place of wanderers from many suns, a quiet cosmic harbor where the lost have come to rest. If you could hover there, watching from one of its frozen shores, you would not feel the passage of time. There would be no sunrise or sunset, only the faint, steady glow of the Milky Way stretching across the black. You might notice, after many centuries, that the constellations had shifted slightly, that the sun itself was moving, carrying its faint halo of ice through the galaxy. Every speck of the Oort Cloud would glide with it, like dust caught in a gentle current. There is no hurry, no urgency, only the endless, slow motion of existence. It is easy to think of the Oort Cloud as a boundary, but in truth it feels more like an exhale. The solar system does not stop there. It fades into the wider universe, as soft and gradual as twilight. Each comet, each grain of frozen dust, is a fragment of that fading breath, shimmering quietly at the threshold between what belongs to us and what never did. And in that silence, far beyond the warmth of the planets, the sun still whispers its pull, keeping these forgotten wanderers close, not out of possession, but out of memory. If you could drift far enough into the Oort Cloud, the idea of direction would begin to lose its meaning. Up and down would dissolve into the same thing. The sun would shrink into a bright bead of white fire behind you, barely strong enough to cast light on your gloved hand. Ahead, all directions would look alike, filled with blackness that was not empty but infinite. There, the edge of the solar system softens into the space between stars. You might think of it as an ending, but the truth is softer. It is the place where one story simply blurs into another. Within this quiet sphere, gravity is a whisper shared between many worlds. The sun's pull reaches out so delicately that it feels more like suggestion than control. Other stars pass from time to time, and when they do, their invisible hands tug at the Oort Cloud's edges. The result is not chaos, but a slow rearrangement, as if the universe were idly stirring the contents of a dream. Some of the icy wanderers are stolen, becoming new members of other systems. Others arrive from afar, finding themselves caught gently in the sun's faint embrace. The Oort Cloud is not a wall around the solar system, but a place of exchange, a cosmic harbor where travelers pause for a few billion years before continuing their long journey through the galaxy. The space between its members is wider than imagination allows. If each icy body were the size of a mountain, their neighbors would still be millions of kilometers apart. You could travel for decades and never see another, yet together they form a vast halo, a sphere so immense that it stretches halfway to the nearest stars. Its outermost fringes may even mingle with the beginning of another system's own cloud. The stars in our night sky are not distant islands. Their edges brush one another, blending gently like overlapping ripples on a pond. Somewhere out there, between one ripple and the next, the sun's influence fades completely, and its last particles of dust surrender to the endless drift of the galaxy. In this place, motion feels like stillness. The objects that make up the Oort Cloud orbit so slowly that their paths seem frozen in time. Yet they are not still. They are breathing in a way that only the universe can. Each one moves to the rhythm of a million-year heartbeat, tracing loops that no one will ever see completed. The outermost orbits are so wide that, from our perspective, their movement cannot even be measured within a human lifetime. But the motion is there, patient and unbroken, marking time for a system that no longer needs a clock. The Oort Cloud is also a keeper of secrets. Within its icy fragments are the same simple molecules that first gathered to form life. Water, carbon, ammonia, and methane sleep together under crusts of ancient frost. When some of these wanderers are nudged inward toward the sun, they carry those ingredients with them. As they fall through the warmer regions of space, the ices begin to vaporize, releasing clouds of gas and dust that drift across planetary paths. It is easy to forget that this quiet process is the same one that may have seeded young Earth with the raw materials for oceans and air. Life, as we know it, may have begun with whispers from the Oort Cloud, carried inward by comets that melted when they met the light. If you could listen here, truly listen, there would be no sound, yet the silence would be full of meaning. It would be the silence of distance, of patience, of things that have seen every change and waded through all of them. The faint tug of passing stars, the slow movement of the galaxy's spiral arms, the pulse of the sun's distant breath, everything here happens in rhythms too long for hearts to notice. To exist in the Oort Cloud is to exist outside of hurry, to rest in the pause between creation and completion. And somewhere in that quiet darkness, a single particle of light still travels outward from the Sunday. It has been moving for hours, maybe days, before reaching a speck of ice. When it arrives, it strikes and scatters, turning that tiny world into a brief mirror. For a heartbeat of eternity, that particle of light reflects home, carrying the memory of our sun into the infinite dark. Then it moves on, continuing its long journey through space, perhaps to touch another distant cloud around another distant star. In that way, the Oort Cloud is not just the outermost part of our solar system. It is a bridge between worlds, a place where our light begins its wander into the galaxy. To imagine it is to feel very small, but also comforted. The Oort Cloud is the sun's final whisper, the soft exhale of a star that still reaches out even in the cold. And just as our warmth fades into that darkness, so too does it blend with the warmth of other suns. There is no isolation at the edge of everything, only a quiet belonging that extends forever. Somewhere beyond the last trace of the planets, beyond where the warmth of sunlight can be felt on skin or stone, the Oort Cloud continues into near nothingness. It stretches so far that distance begins to lose meaning, and time becomes the only measure left. If the solar system were a single breath, this would be the moment after the exhale, the quiet lingering in the air before another inhale begins. The Oort Cloud does not end in a sharp line but in a fading whisper, dissolving into the greater sea of stars that surrounds it. Every now and then, this distant realm stirs. A faint tremor ripples through the cloud, the result of something unseen passing nearby. Perhaps a star wanders a little too close, or the slow gravity of the Milky Way tugs at the sun's outskirts. The Oort cloud responds with grace, shifting almost imperceptibly as its icy citizens rearrange their orbits. Most continue their endless drift, undisturbed, but a few are given a new direction, their paths bent toward the light. One of these will someday appear in our night sky as a comet, glowing faintly before vanishing again into memory. It is as if the Oort cloud breathes life into the sky, sending tiny sparks of itself inward to remind us of where everything began. When those comets finally reach us, they bring with them ancient secrets. Their icy cores are made of the same dust and molecules that once circled the newborn Sunday. Locked within them are the ingredients that formed oceans and rivers and clouds, perhaps even the first delicate traces of chemistry that became life. Each comet's journey is a message from the past, a slow and luminous letter written by the universe itself. As they near the sun, their surfaces awaken, releasing tails of gas and light that trail across the sky. We make wishes upon them, but the Oort cloud knows them differently. To it, each comet is a returning child, briefly warmed before being sent back home into the dark. Scientists have never seen the Oort cloud directly, and perhaps they never will. It is too faint, too distant, too gentle for any telescope to capture. Its existence is known through the behavior of comets, through mathematics, and through the subtle fingerprints of motion left behind in the orbits of these returning wanderers. The Oort cloud hides not because it is trying to, but because it was never meant to be seen. It is the soft outer skin of our solar system, a border made not of walls but of patience, and yet it holds a quiet power. It is our solar system's connection to the galaxy beyond. As the sun and its planets travel through the Milky Way, the Oort cloud moves with them, like a faint shimmering veil around a lantern carried through fog. It protects, in a way, catching some of the debris that drifts through interstellar space, absorbing the gentle chaos of the galaxy's motion. It also gives, trading tiny pieces of itself to the stars as they pass, mingling with the invisible dust between worlds. In this silent exchange, the Oort cloud becomes part of something larger than the solar system that created it. It becomes a thread in the tapestry of the galaxy, joining one star's story to another's. If you could float there, in that borderland between the sun's last pull and the beginning of the Milky Way, you might feel the calm of it settle into you. The stars would be sharper than they appear from Earth, unblurred by air or atmosphere. Their light would fall like silver dust across the frozen terrain. You would see no movement, and yet you would know that everything around you is slowly turning, bound together by a gravity too faint to feel. There would be no sense of danger, no loneliness, only a gentle awareness that you are part of something vast. The sun, though distant, would still shine behind you, a single point of warmth in an endless ocean. Someday, perhaps long after we are gone, the Oort cloud itself will fade. When the sun grows old and expands, its last breaths will scatter these icy wanderers into the stars. They will drift for ages, carrying with them the memory of the system that once held them close. Some may seed other worlds, some may fall into other suns, and some may travel endlessly between them. In that way, the Oort cloud will outlive the sun, its fragments continuing to whisper across space long after our own star has dimmed. It is comforting to imagine that even at the edge of everything, there is still motion, still connection, still quiet life of a kind. The Oort Cloud is not a wall of cold isolation. It is the solar system's lullaby, a reminder that even in silence, creation continues to hum. It is the final breath of a long cosmic song, fading softly into the dark, where the next verse waits to begin. Imagine, for a moment, that you are looking down on the solar system from far beyond its edge. The sun is no longer a blazing sphere of fire, but a pale spark glowing in the dark, and the planets are tiny motes of light orbiting like dust in a faint halo. Beyond them stretches an invisible sea of icy debris, the Oort Cloud, wrapping the entire system in a sphere of frozen silence. It is strange to think that this delicate cloud, made of countless small bodies drifting in unison, is both a relic of the past and a promise of the future. It holds the memories of how our world began and hints at how it might one day end. Each of the objects in this vast sphere carries within it a record of the universe's earliest days. Long before Earth formed oceans, before the planets found their paths, before the sun burned with steady light, there was only dust and gas swirling in a giant disk. As the young sun grew, it scattered this material outward. The heavier particles clustered near the center to become rocky worlds, while the lighter, icy ones were flung toward the edges. Gravity from Jupiter and Saturn acted like slingshots, throwing many of these frozen fragments into orbits that stretched for trillions of kilometers. They were not destroyed or forgotten. They simply drifted outward until the sun's light could no longer reach them. Those scattered remnants became the seeds of the Oort Cloud, suspended in the darkness, waiting quietly for billions of years. What is remarkable is how constant they have remained. The inner planets have been reshaped by volcanism, collisions, erosion, and time, but the Oort Cloud has changed very little. It is a museum of frozen chemistry, preserving the same materials that once floated in the disk from which everything else was born. When scientists study comets that come from this distant region, they find traces of water, carbon compounds, and complex molecules that existed before Earth's first dawn. Each comet that falls inward carries with it a story written in ice, a story that has not been altered by sunlight or weather or wind. The Oort Cloud is, in a sense, the solar system's memory. It is also its soft border. Beyond this point, the pull of the sun weakens until it fades into the influence of the galaxy itself. Every star in the Milky Way carries its own faint cloud of debris, and at these distances, their edges may even overlap. Some of the objects that drift within our Oort Cloud may once have belonged to another star entirely. Likewise, the sun may have collected visitors from far away, remnants of other planetary systems lost in time. It is humbling to imagine that the Oort Cloud might be part of a larger network, a shared space where the dust of many suns mingles together. The sky, which looks like a tapestry of isolated stars, is in truth a web of connections that stretch across unimaginable distances. Every object in the Oort Cloud is bound by gravity, but only barely. It is a fragile loyalty. A small push, the passing of a nearby star, or the shifting tides of the galaxy can send one drifting inward. When that happens, its long slumber ends. Over millennia, it begins to move toward the light, falling faster and faster until the sun's faint glow turns into heat. Ice transforms into vapor, gases expand, and the sleeping fragment becomes a comet, shimmering with a bright tail that stretches across the sky. From Earth, We watch and call it beautiful, never quite realizing that what we are seeing is the Oort Cloud speaking to us, sending us a reminder from the edge of creation. If you could stand on one of those icy bodies before it begins its fall, you would see a sky filled not with familiar constellations, but with the sharp and motionless lights of distant stars. The sun would be a bright speck among them, indistinguishable unless you already knew where to look. The surface beneath your feet would be brittle, powdery, and cold enough to still sound. Each step would echo in your imagination rather than the air, because here there is no air, only the faint hum of the universe itself. Nothing would move except the slow turning of the galaxy, a motion too vast to feel. This is what makes the Oort Cloud so beautiful. It is not alive in any ordinary sense, yet it holds the potential for life within it. It is not a place of activity or color, yet it is filled with meaning. Every fragment of ice, every pebble of rock, is a piece of the story that began the moment the sun was born. And though it may take 1,000,000 years for a single object to complete its orbit, that slow motion keeps the memory of our solar system alive, circling endlessly at the edge of forever. The Oort Cloud does not move quickly, but it endures, keeping its quiet vigil while the stars drift by, patient as the universe itself. In the farthest reaches of the solar system, where the warmth of the sun has long since dissolved into darkness, the Oort Cloud holds its quiet vigil. It is a realm that feels almost outside of time, a place so still that change unfolds in slow spirals of eternity. Yet even here, in this ocean of frost and shadow, nothing is truly motionless. The whole cloud breathes in the rhythm of the galaxy, its countless icy bodies drifting gently to the pulse of stars that move unseen beyond the edge of our knowing. Every few million years, a wandering star drifts near enough to brush against the Oort Cloud with its gravity. The effect is subtle, like a whisper passing over the surface of still water, but across these vast distances, even a whisper can stir an avalanche. Some of the Oort Cloud's frozen wanderers are nudged from their ancient orbits, beginning a slow descent toward the Sunday. They fall so gradually that their journey might take longer than the entire history of humanity, each one carrying the quiet chemistry of creation in its core. When they finally draw near, they light up the sky as comets, brilliant for a moment before disappearing once more into the dark. These are the rare voices of the Oort Cloud, the faint glimmers that remind us of its existence. But the Oort Cloud is not a thing that seeks attention. Its nature is patience. Its meaning is persistence. It holds onto fragments of the solar system's first days, pieces of matter that have survived every upheaval, every collision, every fire that once raged nearer the Sunday. If you could hold a piece of its ice in your hand, you would be touching the same frozen water that once swirled through the dust from which Earth was made, the same atoms that formed in ancient stars billions of years before that, long before the sun was born. In this way, the Oort Cloud is less a structure and more a memory, an archive of everything that came before, written not in words but in chemistry. The stillness of this place can be difficult to imagine. No sound carries here, no light lingers. The distances between its icy fragments are so vast that each one might exist for millions of years without coming close to another. They drift alone through the dark, following their immense elliptical paths, circling the sun as if in a trance. The cold is absolute, a temperature so low that motion nearly ceases, yet even here, the faint warmth of existence persists. Molecules vibrate, however slightly, and with them, the memory of their creation continues. Scientists have long wondered whether this quiet outer region might contain more than comets and ice. Some believe that beyond the visible edge of the Oort cloud, there may be objects large enough to blur the definition between comet and planet. Perhaps there are worlds too small to shine, orbiting the sun on paths so distant that their motion has never been seen. If such hidden bodies exist, they would be frozen beyond imagination, locked in orbits so long that 1 year for them might span the rise and fall of species back on Earth. Their surfaces would be unchanging, untouched by warmth or light, yet they would still circle the sun, loyal to the pull that created them. In the faint reaches of this vast sphere, the Oort cloud connects us to the galaxy itself. Its outer edges are influenced by the tides of distant stars, by the subtle motion of the Milky Way's spiral arms. The sun and its planets drift through the galaxy like travelers carrying a lantern through an endless forest, and the Oort cloud moves with them, its icy veil following every step. When our solar system passes near another star, some of its comets may be stolen away, and others may join from afar. In this way, the Oort cloud is part of something larger than us. It is not just ours but shared, a mingling of worlds, a cosmic shoreline where one system's dust meets another's. To think of it this way brings a kind of peace. The Oort cloud is not a wall that separates us from the stars. It is a bridge that joins us to them. Each of its countless icy fragments could one day wander across the void and find itself orbiting a new sun, carrying with it the memory of where it came from. And perhaps, somewhere out there, pieces from other worlds are already here, circling in our own Oort cloud, unnoticed but still present, silent companions from across the galaxy. When you look up at the night sky and see a single comet streak across the heavens, you are witnessing the movement of that bridge. You are watching the Oort cloud breathe. It is the slow exchange of matter and memory between stars, a reminder that even at the edge of everything, there is connection. Nothing in the universe is truly alone. Even in the coldest, darkest places, something still reaches out and touches something else. The Oort cloud may be invisible to our eyes, but it is the soft halo of our existence, wrapping our world in the oldest and most patient kind of belonging. The Oort cloud has no boundaries that can be drawn on a map. It fades softly outward until its presence becomes indistinguishable from the space between the stars. To imagine it properly, one must forget the idea of edges altogether. The solar system does not stop here, it only grows quieter. The sun's gravity becomes faint and tired, its warmth little more than a memory that has drifted too far to return. In this deep silence, countless icy bodies orbit with a slowness that defies understanding, each one moving through a darkness so absolute that it might as well be eternity itself. It is in this quiet that the smallest forces still have meaning. The pull of distant stars, the faint push of passing dust clouds, even the slow turning of the Milky Way, all of these nudge the Oort cloud in subtle ways. It is not a static shell frozen in space, but a living sea that rises and falls with the tides of the galaxy. As the sun drifts through the spiral arms of the Milky Way, the Oort cloud moves with it, gently reshaped by each encounter. A nearby star might pass close enough to stir the outer regions, tilting orbits and sending a few icy fragments inward. These fragments, after eons of waiting, begin their long descent toward the sun, transforming eventually into the glowing comets that sweep across the night sky. Each one is a memory set free, a spark that escaped the cold to tell its story in light. When a comet appears in our skies, its path is a delicate arc drawn across centuries. The glow that surrounds it is sunlight awakening what has slept since the beginning of time. As the heat reaches the surface, frozen gases evaporate and create a luminous halo that stretches behind it like a dream unraveling in slow motion. We watch these visitors and give them names, but their journeys began long before our species even existed. They have crossed distances so vast that the idea of travel almost loses meaning. A single orbit may last longer than all of human civilization. In their glimmering tails, the ancient breath of the Oort Cloud becomes visible, just for a little while. Back in the cloud itself, everything remains in near-perfect stillness. Most of its members will never fall toward the Sunday. They drift forever in quiet balance, each tracing an invisible curve through the dark. If you could somehow stand upon one of them, the sky around you would seem strange and unmoving. The sun would appear as a brilliant pinprick, not much brighter than the other stars. The constellations would seem sharp and unblinking. You might feel that you were floating inside a sphere of light, surrounded by 100,000 suns, yet bound only faintly to one. The ground beneath your feet would be made of ancient ice, untouched for billions of years, and beneath that ice would lie the same elements that shaped oceans, clouds, and living breath back on Earth. The Oort Cloud is not an ending but a threshold. Beyond it lies interstellar space, a place where no single star's gravity holds dominion. The particles and fragments that drift beyond this point become wanderers of the galaxy, carried on slow currents of invisible force. Some will travel for billions of years before they meet another star's pull, joining a new system and beginning again. In that way, the Oort Cloud is part of an ongoing exchange. It gives pieces of the solar system to the stars and receives pieces from them in return. The same atoms that once belonged to distant suns may now be circling ours, silent guests in the endless night. From the perspective of time, the Oort Cloud is both ancient and young. It has existed since the birth of the solar system, yet its story is still unfolding with every star that passes, every comet that stirs, every faint vibration that ripples through its immense body. The cloud is not merely a collection of ice and dust. It is a reminder of the cosmos as it once was, when everything was fluid and forming and uncertain. It carries that memory quietly, without asking to be noticed. And so it remains, unseen yet enduring, the soft border between our world and the infinity beyond. If the sun could think, perhaps it would look out toward its distant halo and feel a kind of gratitude. Those icy wanderers keep its history safe, guarding the earliest pages of its story at the farthest edges of its light. For now, they drift in calmness, waiting for their next movement through the vastness, their next slow step in the dance of stars. And somewhere deep inside that darkness, among frozen orbits and forgotten paths, the universe keeps its secrets, patiently spinning them into forever. If you could step back far enough to see the Oort Cloud in its entirety, it would not look like a flat ring or a band of dust. It would appear as a great sphere surrounding the sun and every planet within it, a delicate bubble of ice and rock that glows only with borrowed light. It stretches so far that its outermost edges blur into the darkness between the stars. There is no horizon here, no boundary to mark where it ends. The Oort Cloud is the solar system's soft outline, the final trace of the sun's reach drawn faintly against the deep. In the center of this immense sphere, our sun burns on, small and bright but unimaginably distant. To the frozen wanderers in the Oort Cloud, Its light takes hours or even days to arrive. By the time it reaches them, it has faded into something more like a memory than a flame. The warmth that sustains life on Earth becomes here a ghost of heat, too weak to melt ice, too faint to mark one side of a comet from another. Yet still, that light defines them. Even at the farthest edge, where the pull of the sun becomes gentle enough to lose its authority, the Oort Cloud's icy fragments continue to circle in slow devotion, loyal to the gravity that once gathered them together. The shape of this cloud is not a perfect sphere, but close enough that its differences can only be guessed at. It wraps around the solar system like a shell of frost, enclosing all the inner worlds in a quiet, unseen embrace. Closer to the sun, the comets form a denser swarm, but as the distance grows, they become fewer and more widely spaced until the space between them is measured in billions of kilometers. It is a structure so vast that no photograph could ever capture it, no telescope could ever frame it. The only way to glimpse it is through imagination, and even then, the scale is almost too large to hold in a single thought. The Oort Cloud's spherical shape is one of its most curious traits. It tells a story about the forces that built it. In the beginning, when the sun was young, the region beyond the giant planets was filled with ice and rock left over from creation. The gravity of Jupiter and Saturn threw much of that debris outward, hurling it to distances so great that the sun's hold weakened but never broke. Over time, passing stars and the tidal pull of the Milky Way stirred these fragments into new orbits, scattering them in every direction until they surrounded the sun completely. What began as a flat disk of dust eventually swelled into a sphere, a luminous cocoon of remnants that now extends almost halfway to the next star. It is humbling to think that even something so distant, so faint, belongs to our solar system. The Oort Cloud is not separate from the planets we know. It is part of the same great family of motion that began billions of years ago. Each icy fragment still responds, however slightly, to the sun's invisible hand. When a comet is pulled from this far-flung halo, its orbit brings it through the planetary regions like a thread passing through the weave of history. Some of these comets fall so close to the sun that they disintegrate completely, leaving only vapor and dust behind. Others swing around and return to the cold, carrying with them new elements gathered from their brief visit to the inner worlds. In this way, the Oort Cloud connects the beginning of the solar system to its living present, linking the ancient with the immediate in a single, unbroken cycle. From afar, if you could somehow hover outside its edge, the Oort Cloud might look like a faint mist surrounding a tiny spark. The sun would appear at its center, surrounded by invisible orbits and faint echoes of frozen light. Each comet within that mist would move so slowly that even the idea of motion would feel like an illusion. To observe it would be to see time slowed almost to stillness. The Oort Cloud does not hurry. It is content to remain what it has always been, the patient boundary of the sun's domain. If the Milky Way were to pass a hand through it, stirring its edges with the soft gravity of passing stars, the Oort Cloud would ripple, but not break. It would bend gently and then settle again, carrying on its slow rotation through the eons. It has done this countless times already, and will do so long after the inner planets have changed beyond recognition. The Oort Cloud endures because it asks for nothing. It simply holds its place, surrounding everything with quiet steadiness. And so the sphere remains, invisible yet real, a shell of frozen whispers at the edge of light. It is both the memory and the mirror of the solar system, reflecting the moment when it all began and waiting patiently for the moment when it all will fade. In the soft geometry of that great sphere, the sun's final breath is held in suspension, glowing faintly in the endless dark. Every once in a very long while, something extraordinary happens within the Oort Cloud. For millions of years, its icy inhabitants drift in near-perfect stillness, content to circle the sun at unimaginable distances. Then a disturbance ripples through that quiet. It could be a passing star, brushing just close enough for its gravity to tug at the outermost edges of the cloud. It could be the slow pull of the Milky Way itself, shifting slightly as our solar system drifts through its spiral arm. Whatever the cause, the effect is subtle at first, but across the ages, even the smallest nudge can awaken something that has slept for billions of years. A single icy fragment begins to move. Its long, cold orbit changes, and slowly, patiently, it starts to fall. This is how a comet is born. What was once an invisible speck in the Oort Cloud begins a descent that will take it closer and closer to the Sunday. At first, the journey is silent. For centuries, nothing about its appearance changes. The sunlight reaching it is too weak to stir the frozen gases beneath its crust. But as it drifts inward, the light strengthens. The temperature rises by the smallest degree, and the surface begins to shift. The once still ice cracks, releasing faint jets of vapor that push it ever so slightly, altering its spin, waking it from its long sleep. As it moves closer to the heart of the solar system, the transformation quickens. Water and frozen gases begin to evaporate, creating a faint halo of gas and dust around the nucleus. The sun's radiation pushes this material backward, forming the bright tail that arcs away into space. From Earth, that tail becomes the most visible sign of its existence, a glowing thread of light stretching across the sky. Yet the heart of the comet remains small and unassuming, often only a few kilometers wide, a dark lump of ancient ice carrying within it the oldest memories of the solar system's birth. Every comet that passes through our skies has made this same journey. It began as one of the countless fragments that dwell in the Oort Cloud, shaken loose by time and gravity. Some fall inward only once, consumed by the sun's warmth or torn apart by its tidal pull. Others survive their visit, curving gracefully around the sun and heading back into the dark, their tails fading behind them until they vanish once more into the unseen distance. When they return, it might be thousands or even millions of years later. By then, whole civilizations will have risen and vanished, and the Earth itself will have changed in ways the comet cannot imagine. Yet its path will still bring it home again, faithful to the same orbit that began in the silent Oort Cloud. To the naked eye, a comet seems brief and fragile, a momentary spark in the night. But what we see is only the last chapter of a story that began long before human eyes looked upward. The light we admire is born from a journey so immense that it stretches across geological ages. Each comet carries with it the ingredients that once built our world. Within its frozen core lie the same elements that fill our oceans and shape our air. When these icy travelers fall toward the sun, they are not simply burning out, they are returning to the warmth that first gave them meaning. For the Oort Cloud, every comet is like a heartbeat. The great sphere of ice and dust seems still from afar, but each departing comet is a pulse of motion, a sign that the system still breathes. When one of its members leaves for the inner solar system, it carries a whisper of the outer dark with it, a memory of quiet places where time has no hold. And when that comet fades from sight, the Oort Cloud closes around the absence, waiting for another to stir. There is something comforting in that rhythm. The Oort cloud may seem unreachable, but it speaks to us every time a comet lights the sky. Each one is a messenger from the outermost edge of our home, a reminder that we live in a system both vast and alive. Somewhere out there, beyond the last trace of sunlight, other comets are waiting, asleep in the cold, unaware of the journey that awaits them. They will awaken slowly, as all things do, and begin their long fall inward. Perhaps one of them will someday appear above a future world, shining for eyes not yet born. And when it does, it will carry the same quiet truth as all those before it, that even at the farthest edge of creation, nothing is ever completely still. Everything, in time, returns to the light. The Oort cloud is often imagined as a grand accumulation of comets and ice, a boundless sphere thick with hidden wanderers, but this picture is both true and misleading. In reality, it is almost entirely empty. The vastness of its space dwarfs the number of its inhabitants so completely that calling it a cloud at all is an act of poetry rather than accuracy. If the entire Oort cloud were compressed into something you could hold in your mind, the ratio of matter to emptiness would be so extreme that you could travel for years without ever meeting another speck of ice. It is a kingdom of isolation, where silence has no edges and distance becomes its own kind of substance. Each object that drifts within it is alone in the truest sense of the word. Between one icy fragment and the next lies enough emptiness to swallow thousands of worlds like our own. Yet that emptiness is not meaningless. It is what gives the Oort cloud its quiet character, its strange peace. Within that silence, every motion, no matter how small, takes on significance. A comet's turn, a slight shift in orbit, a whisper of gravity from a passing star, these moments ripple through the dark like faint music, connecting objects that are separated by unimaginable space. If you could drift among them, you might not even realize you were moving. The stars would look almost motionless, and the sun would be no larger than a bright pinprick far behind you. The nearest comet might lie millions of kilometers away, invisible against the blackness. There would be no sound, no light, no sense of direction. Only the gentle tug of gravity would remind you that you still belong to something, that the sun's influence, however faint, still reached this far. To experience the Oort cloud firsthand would not be like traveling through a storm of debris, but like floating through a dream that never wakes. Even though its emptiness is vast, it holds stories within it. Each comet is a fragment of an ancient time, a relic from the first days of the solar system, when everything was young and hot and restless. Those tiny icy cores hold the memory of chaos, the collisions, the formation of planets, the scattering of dust and stone. And yet, while the inner worlds changed, these outer exiles remained untouched. Their surfaces are as they were billions of years ago, undisturbed by weather or sunlight or sound. In the emptiness around them, they preserve the unbroken truth of what came before. The Oort cloud's sparseness is a kind of balance. If it were crowded, collisions would tear it apart, and the delicate equilibrium that keeps it whole would vanish. Its vast stretches of nothing are what allow it to last, what let it endure through the movements of the galaxy. The emptiness cushions it, slows its changes, keeps its countless members from interfering with one another. What seems desolate is, in a quiet way, necessary. It is not absence, but preservation. The inner solar system thrives on activity. There, planets pull on one another, moons circle endlessly, and the sun floods everything with heat and motion. But out here, life continues in a slower rhythm. The Oort Cloud is a counterpoint to that brightness, a reminder that stillness, too, can be beautiful. It shows that existence does not always need sound or movement to have meaning. Its quiet is not the quiet of death, but of patience. If you could watch it long enough, over the course of 1,000,000 years, you would see its slow breathing. You would see the faint rearrangement of orbits, the rare birth of a comet, the gradual tilt of the whole cloud as the galaxy's tides pass through it. Each moment would be imperceptible to a human eye, but together they would form a steady rhythm, the heartbeat of a system that never truly sleeps. The Oort Cloud's emptiness is also what connects it to the rest of the universe. Beyond its furthest edge, the distances between stars are even greater, the void even deeper. The space that begins here continues without end, linking one star to the next like invisible thread. The same nothingness that fills the Oort Cloud fills all of creation, and within that vastness, everything that exists is suspended. When we think of the Oort Cloud, it can seem lonely, but perhaps it is not loneliness at all. Perhaps it is peace, the purest kind of rest. The comets that drift there are not waiting for anything. They simply are. Their stillness is complete, their solitude serene. It is a place that asks nothing and gives everything, a sanctuary of silence where the echoes of creation have come to rest. The emptiness that surrounds them is not the absence of life, but the space in which it all began. It is the quiet before the first spark, and the quiet that will remain when all sparks have faded again. If sound could travel through space, the Oort Cloud would be the quietest place in all existence. Its silence is not the gentle hush of a library or the stillness of a sleeping forest, but something deeper and older, a silence so complete that even the idea of sound begins to fade. It is the quiet of creation before anything stirred, the quiet that followed the first burst of light when the universe was still cooling into form. Within this vast, frozen halo, there is no wind to whisper, no air to carry vibration, no surface to echo a single movement. The silence here is not empty. It is full of patience, and in that patience lies something like peace. To imagine that silence, you must first imagine what it has endured. Every particle in the Oort Cloud has been turning slowly for billions of years, tracing its orbit in stillness. The smallest collisions are so rare that one might not occur in the entire lifetime of the human species. If you could float there and listen, the loudest thing you would hear would be your own thoughts. Even the light of the sun, by the time it reaches this far, does not make a sound when it touches the ice. It simply passes, unresisted, illuminating nothing but its own persistence. Silence in the Oort Cloud is not the absence of life, but its distant echo. The comets and icy fragments here contain the same water and organic molecules that later seeded Earth. They are pieces of the same story that gave rise to rivers and voices and the hum of cities. But out here, all of that noise is gone, replaced by the vast stillness that came before it. The Oort Cloud is the universe's reminder that everything once began in quiet. Before there were words, before there were storms or footsteps or heartbeats, there was only this kind of soundless waiting. If you were to drift among the outer edges of the Oort Cloud, you would see stars unlike you have ever seen them before. Each one would shine sharp and unblinking, their light unmarred by any atmosphere. They would seem close enough to touch, though they are separated from you by unimaginable distances. The sun would appear as one of them, only slightly brighter, a familiar spark surrounded by 1,000 others. There would be no sense of movement, no horizon, only the slow recognition that you are surrounded by infinity. In such a place, silence feels alive. It presses gently on the mind, not as emptiness but as presence. The Oort Cloud silence is not total, at least not forever. There are moments, rare and soft, when something stirs. A comet is nudged from its long orbit and begins to fall inward. Its motion cannot be heard, but it can be imagined, the faint pull of gravity drawing it slowly homeward. That motion ripples through the cloud like the memory of a sigh. It is almost as if the Oort Cloud itself is breathing, though each breath takes millions of years. In that rhythm, one can almost sense the music of the cosmos, so slow and deep that only the universe itself could hear it. What makes the silence of the Oort Cloud so profound is that it is both eternal and fragile. It will not last forever. When the sun grows old and expands, its final winds will sweep outward, scattering the Oort Cloud's icy remnants into the galaxy. Some will drift between the stars, carrying with them that long, quiet memory. Others will fall into the pull of new suns, where heat and motion will end their stillness. Yet even as they melt or collide, a part of their silence will remain, woven into the dust and gas that will one day form new worlds. The Oort Cloud's calm is not destroyed by change. It is simply shared, passed from one generation of stars to the next. If you close your eyes and think of that silence, you might begin to feel it, even from here. It is the space between heartbeats, the pause between thoughts, the stillness of deep night when the world seems to rest. The Oort Cloud exists beyond sound, beyond time, beyond everything that hurries. It is the universe in its most peaceful form, waiting patiently while all else burns and fades. It does not call for attention or offer spectacle. It simply reminds us that, beneath all the noise of life, the cosmos still hums in quiet harmony. And perhaps that is why, when we watch a comet trace its luminous path across the night sky, we feel a strange calm. We are watching a piece of that silence brought into motion, the Oort Cloud speaking in the only language it knows. Its words are made of light, its voice a long, graceful arc through the dark. And when it fades, the sky seems quieter for having heard it, as if the silence itself has deepened, wrapping the earth once more in its patient, endless embrace. The farther one drifts from the sun, the thinner its breath becomes. In the familiar worlds closer to home, the solar wind flows with strength, carrying streams of charged particles that sculpt magnetic fields and paint auroras across the skies of planets. But as that wind travels outward, it weakens, softening until it becomes a sigh so faint that it can no longer be felt. Somewhere in the space between the outer planets and the beginning of the Oort Cloud lies a boundary where that breath gives out entirely. Beyond it, the influence of the sun fades, and the solar system begins to dissolve into the vastness of interstellar space. This is the region known as the heliopause, and it marks the final reach of the sun's living touch. Beyond this invisible line, the Oort Cloud floats in near complete stillness, listening to the last echo of the solar wind as it dies into silence. The solar wind is not a sound but a feeling, a constant stream of energy that fills every corner of the inner solar system. It pushes outward in all directions, shaping the paths of comets and the tails of dust that stretch away from the Sunday. It is what gives our small world its protective shield and what carries the warmth of the sun's magnetic heartbeat across space. But by the time it reaches the Oort Cloud, That pulse has slowed to almost nothing. The particles are so widely scattered that they can drift for miles without ever meeting another. The sun's breath becomes a whisper so thin that even the emptiness begins to ignore it. For the icy wanderers of the Oort Cloud, this is the last thread that ties them to home. Each one still orbits the sun, still belongs to its gravity. But beyond this region there is no longer warmth, no longer pressure or wind, only the faintest trace of light. The solar wind's final strength dwindles until it mingles with the cosmic winds that drift between the stars. It is a place of meeting, a border between one world and all the others. The Oort Cloud exists inside this meeting place, half belonging to the sun, half already part of the galaxy beyond. If you could hover there and feel the boundary, you would not notice a wall or a sudden change. You would simply sense that something has thinned, that a rhythm has ended. The stream of particles that once raced from the sun would have slowed into a stillness too gentle to detect. Yet this quiet edge is not empty. Beyond it, the interstellar medium begins, a faint mist of gas and dust that drifts between the stars. The Oort Cloud lies on the threshold between these two worlds, where the last breath of the sun meets the first whisper of the galaxy. It is humbling to imagine this transition, because it reminds us that the solar system, though vast, is not isolated. The Oort Cloud is the bridge between what is ours and what is shared. Its outermost members may no longer feel the sun's warmth, but they still move in its rhythm. At the same time, they are shaped by the tides of the Milky Way, tugged ever so slightly by forces that come from far beyond. The sun's final breath mingles with the breath of other stars, and in that mingling, the boundaries between systems begin to blur. In that liminal space, where one influence ends and another begins, there is a feeling of continuity rather than separation. The universe does not build walls, it lets everything overlap. The Oort Cloud is part of that gentle overlap, a place where the sun's story and the galaxy's story become one. The solar wind, which began as a fierce exhalation billions of years ago, ends here as a tender hush, its final particles scattering outward to become part of something greater. If you listen with your imagination, you can almost hear that fading breath. It is the sound of distance, of the last warmth dissolving into cold, of the final glow of a star's influence blending into the dark sea that surrounds it. It is not a sad sound, but a peaceful one, the natural end of a long journey. Every star exhales this way eventually, and every star's breath merges with the others, forming the soft winds that sweep through the galaxy. In this sense, the Oort Cloud is not only the solar system's outermost region, but also its way of speaking to the cosmos. Someday, long after our sun has cooled and faded, its last breath will still drift here. It will spread out into the interstellar medium, mixing with the remnants of other suns, becoming part of the same invisible current that once flowed past the Oort Cloud. And though the wind will be gone, the story it carried will remain the quiet message of a star that once shone brightly, now remembered by the frozen halo it left behind. The Oort Cloud, illuminated for a moment by that dying breath, will be the sun's final whisper into the endless night. Every so often, the quiet patience of the Oort Cloud is broken by a small act of motion that begins as softly as a sigh. An icy fragment, nudged by some unseen hand, begins to drift inward. Perhaps a passing star has brushed against the edge of the cloud, or the slow turning of the galaxy has shifted the fabric of gravity just enough to set it loose. For ages beyond counting, it has been asleep in darkness, frozen in the same stillness that held it since the birth of the solar system. Now, with the gentlest of movements, its long fall begins. It does not rush or tumble, it glides. The sun, far away, is not yet even a star to it, but a faint spark in the distance. The journey ahead will last longer than the rise and fall of civilizations, and yet, the pull is steady. As the fragment moves inward, it starts to feel the faintest touch of sunlight. At first, the rays have no warmth, only the promise of it. The ice remains frozen solid, harder than stone. But with each passing year, the speck of light grows a little brighter, and the frozen gases deep within the comet's crust begin to stir. The tiniest bubbles of vapor push outward, creating jets so faint that they would be invisible even to a close observer. These tiny breaths alter the comet's course, rotating it slightly, guiding it toward the inner regions of the solar system. It is as though the sun is slowly waking it, calling it home. By the time it crosses into the region of the planets, its transformation is underway. The sunlight now has strength enough to melt its outer layers, releasing clouds of gas and dust that glow softly in the dark. Around its rocky heart forms a luminous halo called a coma, and behind it stretches a long shimmering tail that always points away from the Sunday. From Earth, that tail appears as a thread of white fire drawn across the night sky. Yet to the comet itself, it is a cloak of light, the first and only warmth it has ever known. Each comet's path is an echo of its origin. The curve it takes, the speed of its descent, the size of its tail, all are signatures of where it came from in the Oort Cloud. Some comets come from the outermost reaches, where the sun's gravity is so weak that it takes millions of years to complete an orbit. Others come from the inner cloud, closer but still unimaginably distant, taking thousands of years between visits. When they appear to us, they are the visible memory of the solar system's beginnings, a momentary revelation of what lies hidden beyond all light. The sight of a comet has always stirred wonder in those who see it. Long before science gave names to the stars, people looked up at those glowing visitors and saw messages from the heavens. They did not know that these luminous travelers carried the same water and organic compounds that make up life itself. They could not have guessed that the dust falling from a comet's tail might once have seeded the oceans of the earth. Yet even without that knowledge, they felt something true, that these wanderers were both strange and familiar, distant yet connected to the lives that watched them. When a comet completes its journey around the sun, it begins the long return to the dark. Its brightness fades as it moves away, and the tail that once trailed behind it disappears into shadow. Soon it becomes just another fragment among the billions drifting in the Oort Cloud. The warmth that had awakened it cools again, and silence reclaims it. It will sleep for millions of years before another disturbance sends it inward once more. The cycle continues endlessly, a slow rhythm of awakening and rest, of light and darkness. It is comforting to know that the sky's rare spectacles have their roots in stillness. Each comet that sweeps through our skies is a reminder that the universe remembers. Nothing that once was ever truly disappears. The icy wanderers that light our nights are made of the same dust that built our world, and one day they will return to the dark from which they came, carrying our story with them. They are proof that the farthest corners of the solar system are not forgotten, that even the most distant and quiet places can send beauty into the light. When you next see a comet glowing faintly above the horizon, try to imagine the vastness of its path. Picture the black ocean of space it has crossed, the long silence it has carried, the gentle pull that guides it home again. It is not a fleeting thing, though it seems to move swiftly across the sky. It is the voice of the Oort Cloud made visible, a slow song of motion and memory that has been playing since the beginning of time, and though it fades, the music continues, carried on through the cold, waiting once more in the darkness for its turn to shine. Throughout the long history of the solar system, the Oort Cloud has never been untouched. The stars themselves have passed close, each one leaving its faint signature upon the icy halo that surrounds our Sunday. Though it moves so slowly that its motion feels eternal, the Oort Cloud is shaped by these encounters. It is a place that remembers every brush, every nudge, every whisper of gravity that has ever passed through it. The stars do not collide here, but they leave ripples behind them, soft tides that reshape the paths of comets and rearrange the quiet architecture of this frozen frontier. Every few million years, another star wanders near enough to make its presence known. To the Oort Cloud, near is still a distance so great that no light would show the approach, only the unseen influence of gravity spreading like a shadow. The star does not strike or sweep away the cloud, but bends it slightly, like wind turning the surface of a calm sea. A few icy bodies are dislodged, sent inward toward the Sunday. Some are cast outward into the deep where they drift between the stars, becoming nomads in the galaxy. The rest continue their orbits, unchanged except for a subtle shift that will take eons to reveal itself. The idea that other stars touch the Oort Cloud may seem strange, yet the solar system moves through a busy neighborhood. Our sun, like all stars, travels in a slow orbit around the Milky Way, circling the galactic center once every 200 million years. Along the way, it passes through different regions of the galaxy, each filled with stars, gas, and clouds of dust. Some stars move faster, others slower, and occasionally their paths draw close. When that happens, their gravitational fields intertwine briefly, and the Oort Cloud feels the encounter as a soft trembling. Over billions of years, these passing stars have shaped its outer edges, mixing its fragments with those from other systems. In a way, the Oort Cloud is a shared space, a borderland where the influence of the sun meets that of other suns. It is possible that some of the comets within it were not born here at all, but were captured from other stars long ago, carried into our solar system during one of these stellar meetings. If that is true, then when a comet appears in our sky, we may be seeing the visitor of another world, a piece of another system's history now drifting through our own. The Oort Cloud becomes not just a relic of our beginnings, but a gallery of the galaxy's memory, a collection of fragments gathered from across time and space. The passing stars leave no scars, only motion. The comets that they set free become the rare emissaries that we see from Earth. Some streak briefly through the skies and vanish. Others linger for months, glowing softly against the dark before retreating to the outer cold. Each of these is part of that greater rhythm, a quiet exchange between the stars. Matter drifts outward from one system and inward to another, as if the galaxy itself were breathing. The Oort Cloud is the place where that breath is felt most gently, a cradle rocked by the tides of distant suns. Over time, the traces of each encounter fade. The comets settle back into their orbits, the shapes of their paths smoothed by the steady hand of gravity. But the Oort Cloud never forgets entirely. Its structure today is the sum of all those brushes with other stars, each one adding a faint distortion, a small tilt, a ripple that still lingers. When astronomers study its possible shape, they see not a perfect sphere but something slightly stretched, a sign that it is a living memory of the sun's long journey through the galaxy. If you could stand at its farthest edge and look outward, you would see no boundary between the Oort Cloud and the space beyond. The stars would look sharp and infinite, and you might feel as though you were suspended among them. Somewhere out there would be the very stars that once passed close enough to shape this place, their light still reaching across the emptiness. The thought is almost comforting that even across such immense distances, the stars still influence one another, touching gently through their gravity, exchanging fragments of their creation. The Oort Cloud, though invisible, is a symbol of that quiet connection. It reminds us that nothing in the universe exists in true isolation. Every star, every planet, every grain of dust is part of a great web of movement that binds all things together. The passing stars do not destroy the Oort Cloud. They remind it to change, to let go of what must fall inward, and to welcome what drifts in from afar. And so the cycle continues, endlessly slow, endlessly graceful. The sun carries its halo of ice through the galaxy like a lantern surrounded by snowflakes, each one moving to the rhythm of stars that pass, speak, and fade away again into the dark. Is less than #3. 0 hash is greater than. Out in the Oort Cloud, far beyond the light of the planets, the cold is almost perfect. The temperature here hovers just a few degrees above absolute zero, the point at which all motion would stop. It is a kind of stillness that defies understanding. Nothing stirs except the faint turning of distant comets, and even that motion is so slow that it might as well be a dream. Yet this stillness is not emptiness. It is a kind of preservation, a quiet holding place for the oldest materials in the solar system. Each icy fragment carries within it the chemistry of beginnings, the raw ingredients from which life itself once formed. The Oort Cloud, in all its frozen silence, is a vault of time. The cold that fills it is relentless, but also nurturing in its own strange way. It protects, it keeps what it touches unchanged for billions of years. On Earth, the passage of time leaves marks everywhere. Rocks crumble, oceans shift, air and sunlight wear down all things. But out here, there is no air, no water, no sunlight strong enough to reach. The ice remains as it was on the day it formed, holding within it the record of a time before planets, before warmth, before any world had found its shape. It is the closest thing the universe has to memory. If one of these ancient comets could be held in your hands, it would not feel smooth or uniform. It would be rough, dark, and brittle. Beneath its dusty surface would lie frozen gases and minerals that have never melted, never evaporated, never known the touch of heat. Trapped in that frozen shell would be carbon compounds and simple molecules that once drifted freely through the primordial solar nebula. These are the same molecules that, when delivered to young planets by ancient impacts, may have sparked the first organic reactions on Earth. The cold may seem lifeless, but it is also the custodian of potential. There is a beauty to how this distant region keeps its secrets. The Oort Cloud does not decay or collapse. It simply persists, unmoving except for its patient orbits. The light from the sun is too weak to erode it, and the gravity of the planets too distant to disturb it. The cold here has frozen time itself. The distinction between now and then no longer matters. A comet that circles the sun once every 10 million years experiences no difference between its first passage and its 1,000th. To it, the universe is an unbroken stretch of quiet. In this way, the Oort Cloud offers a kind of comfort to the imagination. It reminds us that not everything in the cosmos is fleeting. Stars burn and die, planets erode and vanish, but the Oort Cloud endures. Its cold is not cruel. It is the calm at the farthest edge of creation, a place where change slows to stillness. It is the solar system's deep breath, held for eternity. If you could stand on one of its icy worlds, your breath would crystallize instantly and fall as a glittering mist. The sky above would not be black, but a rich tapestry of starlight, so clear and sharp that even the faintest suns would shine like jewels. The sun itself would be no more than a bright point among thousands. You would not feel its heat, you would only see its persistence, the quiet reminder that even here, in the coldest place imaginable, light still travels. That small brightness would reflect on the frozen ground, scattering faint halos of color across the ice. It would be the only warmth in an infinite night, a promise that the center still remembers its edge. The Oort Cloud's coldness is not the absence of life, but the balance of it. It holds what is essential until the universe decides to move again. Perhaps one day, long after the sun has changed into something new, the remnants of the Oort Cloud will drift toward other stars. Its ices will melt, its elements will mix with the dust of other systems, and from that mixture, new worlds will form. The cold will have done its work, preserving the building blocks of life until they are needed once more. To think of the Oort Cloud is to think of patience on a cosmic scale. Its cold is not cruel or indifferent. It is the universe's way of keeping safe what might someday be needed again. Within every frozen body that drifts, there is the quiet persistence of life's possibility, sleeping in the dark. The Oort Cloud is not an ending, it is a pause. It is the place where creation rests, perfectly still, perfectly cold, waiting for its next beginning. Each object that drifts in the Oort Cloud carries a history older than any planet, older even than the sun itself. Long before our solar system took shape, before the swirling of gas and dust condensed into the glowing sphere at its center, the materials that now make up those icy fragments were already ancient. They came from other stars that lived and died, their cores forging carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and all the elements that would one day find their way into comets, oceans, and people. When those stars exploded, they scattered their ashes across the galaxy, and from that stardust, new worlds began to form. The Oort Cloud is made from that same inheritance. Every frozen grain is a remnant of cosmic ancestry, a small fragment of the galaxy's oldest memory. When the sun was born, it drew together the debris left by these earlier generations of stars. The densest materials gathered near its warmth to become the rocky planets, while the lighter gases and ices drifted outward to form the gas giants and their moons. Yet not all of it found a stable home. Some of the leftover material was caught in the gravitational cross-currents of the forming planets. Jupiter and Saturn, the great architects of the outer solar system, tossed vast amounts of icy debris outward, sending it beyond Neptune's reach. Instead of being lost to space, some of that material lingered, slowed by the sun's gravity, until it settled into immense orbits that would never return to the inner solar system. That is how the Oort Cloud was born, not from the chaos of destruction, but from the balance between holding on and letting go. Inside each of those icy bodies lies a kind of archive. The water locked in their depths is the same that once drifted freely through the nebula, unspoiled by time or heat. The carbon compounds are unaltered recipes from the early chemistry of creation, untouched since before Earth was even a thought. If we could read their contents, we might learn what the solar system was made of before it changed, before gravity and sunlight and heat transformed it. The Oort Cloud keeps these records safe in cold storage, protecting the original handwriting of the cosmos. Occasionally, a comet escapes and makes the long fall inward, and when it does, it brings a small piece of that ancient story back to the light. Scientists study these rare visitors to understand what the solar system once was. They find amino acids and organic molecules that could have seeded the first life on Earth. It is humbling to realize that something as fleeting as a comet's tail can hold such profound meaning. These icy wanderers are the messengers of memory, carrying whispers of the universe's earliest dawn. The Oort Cloud is not only a structure of ice and rock, but of time itself. It is a slow clock that measures in ages rather than years, in orbits that last longer than civilizations. Each object within it moves to a rhythm too vast for us to perceive. When a comet leaves and another arrives, it is as though the cloud itself is turning a page in a story that has no end. In this way, the Oort Cloud becomes a kind of cosmic library, its shelves made of frozen orbits and its volumes written in the language of chemistry and light. It is easy to forget that this quiet halo of ice has touched everything we know. Without it, Earth might never have received the water that filled its oceans, or the organic compounds that formed its first living cells. Every river, every cloud, every breath of air may owe its existence to those ancient deliveries from the outer dark. The Oort Cloud is not just the solar system's outer boundary but its foundation, a reminder that life begins not only in warmth and light but also in the cold patience of distance. If you imagine standing on one of those ancient fragments, you would feel that inheritance all around you. The stars would shimmer with the same elements that lie frozen beneath your feet, and in the thin light of the sun, you would be looking back toward the world that those elements helped create. The Oort Cloud's memory would feel vast and silent, stretching beyond comprehension, yet it would also feel familiar. It would remind you that everything in the universe is made from the same story told again and again through different forms. The Oort Cloud holds that story gently, never rushing it, never changing it, preserving what was so that what is might exist. Its frozen hearts are not lifeless, they are the memory of how life came to be. In their silence, they wait, carrying within them the history of stars and the promise that, someday, those memories will become something new again. Distance is difficult to imagine when we speak of the Oort Cloud. The scale of it stretches far beyond the boundaries of ordinary thought. To say that it lies 50,000 times farther from the sun than Earth does not truly capture its immensity, for numbers lose meaning in the face of such distances. If Earth were a single grain of sand, the Oort Cloud would lie as far away as a mountain. It forms a sphere so large that light itself takes nearly a year to cross from one side to the other. It is both part of our solar system and almost beyond it, a vast and invisible bridge that connects us to the space between the stars. If you could travel outward from the sun, past the orbits of all the planets, and even the farthest comets we have ever seen, you would begin to feel that distance in your bones. The sun would grow dimmer until it became no brighter than a distant lantern. The warmth that sustains life on Earth would fade into nothing, and the familiar glow of our solar neighborhood would dissolve into a dark sea of starlight. Out here, the distances between things are so great that meaning begins to blur. The Oort Cloud does not end with a wall or a boundary. It simply thins and fades until the pull of other stars becomes just as strong as that of our own. At that point, one can no longer say where the solar system ends or where the galaxy begins. Each fragment of ice and stone within the Oort cloud drifts at unimaginable remove from its neighbors. The nearest object might be billions of kilometers away, and yet they all belong to one vast whole. They are bound not by proximity but by relationship, each one caught in the sun's faint gravitational spell. The invisible thread that holds them is stretched to its limit, yet it remains unbroken. It is strange to think that something so delicate can endure across such vastness, but that is the quiet power of gravity. It needs no strength, only time. The Oort cloud teaches that space is not truly empty. Even in its most distant regions, there are traces of presence. Dust, ice, faint streams of particles, the echo of sunlight that still reaches across the dark. Between every star, between every system, there is this same in-between place, where one realm's influence fades and another's begins. The Oort cloud is our version of that threshold, the soft place where our world mingles with the rest of the galaxy. It is the horizon of our belonging. When a comet from the Oort cloud begins its journey toward the inner solar system, it must cross that vast gulf. Its motion is so slow that a single degree of arc in its orbit might take centuries to complete. The light that reaches it from the sun is already ancient by the time it touches its surface, yet it still responds. Even at that distance, the smallest warmth, the faintest pull, begins to change it. The Oort cloud's distance is immense, but not infinite. There is always connection, however faint. This sense of connection across impossible space is what makes the Oort cloud so beautiful. It shows that everything, no matter how far apart, still belongs to something larger. Every grain of ice that circles in the dark is a note in a single long song that the solar system has been singing since it began. Its melody is distance itself, stretched so wide that it becomes harmony. The Oort cloud is the outermost measure of that music, where the notes fade into silence and the silence becomes part of the sound. If you could somehow watch from its edge, you would see both directions at once. Behind you would be the sun, a spark of warmth surrounded by faintly glowing dust. Ahead would be the galaxy, an ocean of stars so dense that it seems almost solid. You would realize then that the Oort cloud is not an end, but a bridge. It is the place where the familiar light of home meets the unknown. The distance between them is vast, but it is not separation. It is the space in which wonder lives. That distance, impossible and serene, defines who we are. The Oort cloud reminds us that our world is small, but not isolated. It belongs to a larger movement, a slow dance of stars and gravity that fills the Milky Way. Every journey begins somewhere, and for our solar system, that beginning stretches outward into the Oort cloud. Its distance is not emptiness but continuity, the place where our story dissolves into the stories of countless other suns, each with their own halo of frozen time drifting in the dark. Far beyond the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, the sun's light fades into something delicate and uncertain. The Oort cloud, though it belongs to our solar system, exists in a space that is neither truly ours nor entirely the galaxy's. It is a place where borders dissolve and identities blur. Here, the influence of the sun and the pull of the Milky Way are equal partners, and together they weave a soft transition between one domain and the next. The Oort cloud is not a wall separating us from the stars. It is a blending, a gentle handshake between home and the vastness beyond. In this quiet borderland, the sun's light is a ghost. It travels for months before it touches the icy surfaces of comets that drift in slow motion through the dark. When it arrives, it is so faint that it casts no shadow and creates no warmth. Yet it still connects, still defines direction. Even the farthest fragments of ice, those on the very edge of the sun's reach, turn toward it. Their orbits remain shaped by its presence, and in their slow circling, the identity of our solar system endures. But just beyond them, the gravity of other stars begins to tug, and the Oort Cloud becomes a meeting place where one story gives way to another. The galaxy beyond is alive with motion. Stars pass near one another, each carrying its own shell of frozen debris, its own version of an Oort Cloud. Some of these clouds overlap at their edges, trading particles in quiet exchanges that last for millennia. A few of the icy bodies that now belong to our sun may once have orbited another star. Others that formed with us may already be wandering elsewhere, captured by the gravity of distant suns. The Oort Cloud, in this sense, is not entirely ours. It is part of the galaxy's shared conversation, where matter moves slowly between worlds, linking them in unseen threads. To think of this mingling is to understand that the universe is not composed of separate systems, but of overlapping fields of influence. The edges of the Oort Cloud are not the end of the solar system, but the beginning of the galaxy. From this vantage, the sun is one among countless lanterns shining into the dark, each surrounded by its own faint halo of creation's leftovers. Between these halos lies no emptiness, only continuity. The space that separates stars is not a void, but a bridge, filled with invisible motion and the soft hum of gravity that ties everything together. If you were to drift outward through the Oort Cloud, you would not sense when you had left the solar system. The sun's pull would weaken slowly, until one day another star's influence became just as strong. The shift would be subtle, a quiet exchange of guardianship. The path of your orbit would change its allegiance, and you would begin to belong to another sun without ever noticing the moment of crossing. That is the nature of the universe. Boundaries that are not borders but gradients, transitions that never end. The Oort Cloud's outer edge is the frontier of that blending. It is the horizon where the sun's light becomes indistinguishable from starlight. From there, the Milky Way glows with a serene brilliance, not as a distant spectacle, but as an immediate presence. The stars no longer seem far away. They surround you, filling every direction with their quiet radiance. The dark between them is not emptiness, but depth, a vast ocean whose surface shimmers with endless light. When one of the Oort Cloud's frozen wanderers escapes this delicate balance, it begins a long fall toward the Sunday, but some are nudged outward instead, freed from the sun's gravity to roam the spaces between stars. These interstellar travelers carry with them the chemistry of their origins, drifting for eons before finding another star to orbit. In this way, the Oort Cloud participates in the galaxy's endless exchange, seeding new systems with fragments of old ones. Every world that forms, every ocean that fills, carries the inheritance of places long forgotten. Perhaps, in the far future, when the sun grows old and its light begins to fade, the Oort Cloud will disperse completely, its fragments becoming part of the interstellar tide. They will wander until they are gathered again by new suns, folded into new clouds, and shaped into new worlds. The boundary between what was and what will be is as soft as the one that exists now between the solar system and the galaxy. Nothing is lost. It only changes context, finding new centers around which to turn. From Earth, we see only the faintest hint of all this. the brief appearance of a comet, or the slow passing of a star through the sky. Yet in those moments, we are witnessing the exchange of worlds. The Oort Cloud reminds us that we are not confined to one corner of the universe. Our origins, our atoms, and even our future are part of something larger and shared. The sun's reach may fade, but its story continues through the quiet drift of its distant children, blending seamlessly into the grand, luminous rhythm of the galaxy. The Oort Cloud has never been seen directly, yet its presence is certain. It reveals itself not through light or shadow, but through the messengers it sends inward, the long-period comets that sweep past our skies before vanishing again into the dark. They arrive from every direction, which tells us something profound. They do not come from a flat disk like the planets, but from a vast spherical shell surrounding everything we know. The Oort Cloud exists because of their paths, and though it cannot be captured by telescope or lens, its influence is written across the history of the solar system. The story of its discovery is one of patient inference and quiet wonder. In the middle of the 20th century, a Dutch astronomer named Jan Oort studied the orbits of hundreds of comets. He noticed that many of them shared something remarkable. Their farthest points lay at immense distances, far beyond Neptune, far beyond Pluto, even beyond the region we now call the Kuiper Belt. And their orbits were not confined to any single plane. They came from every angle, suggesting that the solar system was surrounded by an enormous cloud of icy debris. From this idea, the Oort Cloud was born in the human mind, a structure so distant that it could never be seen but so real that its fingerprints were everywhere. Since then, every new comet from the deep sky has served as a kind of confirmation. Each orbit traced backward points to that invisible sphere, reinforcing the truth of what Oort proposed. The comets are like sparks flying from a fire we cannot see, their fleeting brilliance hinting at the vastness of the source. Some scientists describe it as a ghostly boundary, the sun's final whisper into the universe. Others think of it as a cradle of beginnings, holding the leftover ingredients from the birth of our solar system. Both are true. The Oort Cloud is the past and the edge, the memory and the threshold. No spacecraft has ever reached it. Even the fastest probes humanity has launched, moving at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour, would take tens of thousands of years to arrive. It lies that far away. And yet, though we may never touch it, it touches us. Every drop of water on Earth, every molecule of carbon in our bodies, every trace of organic chemistry that makes life possible owes something to those icy remnants preserved in the Oort Cloud. In its quiet distance, it guards the original materials of creation, unchanged and waiting, as if time itself had slowed to protect them. It is an odd thing to know of a place without ever seeing it. The Oort Cloud exists as a concept more than an image, but its reality feels no less tangible. We feel it each time a comet graces our skies, its luminous tail drawn out by sunlight, its faint core carrying whispers from the beginning of the solar system. When we gaze at such a comet, we are not only looking at an object, but at a message that has traveled for millions of years to reach us. It is as if the Oort Cloud has sent us a reminder that the edges of our home are not boundaries but invitations to wonder. The thought that our solar system extends so far outward that its edge begins to blend with the interstellar medium is comforting. It means that the sun, though it shines for us here, is part of something much larger. Its gravity reaches into the dark like a hand held toward the stars. And in that gesture lies both connection and humility. The Oort Cloud is the meeting point of the familiar and the unknown, the last embrace before the sun's influence fades into the Milky Way's currents. Perhaps one day, far in the future, our descendants or their creations will travel that far, crossing the invisible boundary where the sun's gravity loosens its hold. They will drift among the icy fragments, touching the untouched, gathering the relics of our beginnings. They will find, perhaps, that the Oort Cloud is not the end of the solar system, but its continuation, a soft passageway into the galaxy beyond. Until then, we must imagine it, and in doing so, we participate in its quiet mystery. It is a strange and beautiful thing that something so distant can feel so personal. The Oort Cloud does not shine, does not move in any way that we can perceive, yet its existence shapes our understanding of home. It reminds us that our solar system is not a closed room but a wide, breathing expanse, stretching gently into infinity. It is the sun's final frontier, the boundary of belonging, the place where light grows thin and gravity becomes a memory. And though we may never see it with our eyes, we can feel its presence in every comet's trail, in every story the universe tells us about where we come from and where we are still meant to go. Time in the Oort Cloud moves differently, not because the laws of physics change, but because distance stretches perception until even motion seems to stop. Everything that happens there happens slowly. An orbit that would take Earth a single year to complete takes a comet from the Oort Cloud millions. The journey from one side of the cloud to the other would outlast entire species, civilizations, and perhaps even stars. To the frozen wanderers that live there, time is not a series of moments, but an endless continuum of quiet turning. The Oort Cloud is the solar system's clock, not marking hours or days, but ages. If you were to stand within it, you would not sense the passage of time at all. There are no days or nights, no seasons, no cycles of warmth and cold. The sun would appear fixed, a steady point of light that never rises or sets. The stars would not seem to move. Everything would appear eternal. Yet beneath that stillness, the slow machinery of gravity is always working. Every object drifts with perfect precision, bound in orbits that were drawn billions of years ago. These paths are not chaotic but graceful, each one an echo of the same ancient motion that began when the sun first ignited. The slowness of time here is not a void, it is a rhythm, one so vast that our lives can barely touch it. The Oort Cloud reminds us how brief we are, and yet how connected we remain to that larger rhythm. The same gravity that keeps comets circling the sun also keeps Earth steady in its orbit. The difference is only a matter of scale. What takes us minutes takes them millennia. What for us is fleeting, for them is simply the natural pace of existence. Every so often, that long rhythm produces a brief burst of motion. A comet is nudged from its quiet path and begins the long descent toward the Sunday. In the language of the Oort Cloud, this is a heartbeat. It is the sign that the system is still alive. Millions of years may pass between such awakenings, but they never stop entirely. Each one is a continuation of the pattern that began when the first fragments of ice were thrown outward by the newborn planets. Even the comets that burn out or break apart do not end the story. Their dust settles, their fragments drift, and the memory of their journey becomes part of the greater whole. Time in the Oort Cloud is measured not by what happens quickly, but by what endures. The orbits of its comets are so immense that the galaxy itself changes shape during their travels. Stars that are neighbors when a comet begins its path will be strangers by the time it returns. Yet the comet does not notice. It continues on, following a curve written into the solar system's earliest history. Its patience is infinite, its destination inevitable. There is a quiet wisdom in that constancy, a reminder that motion does not always require haste. In our world, we rush against time. We measure our lives in seconds and years, always aware of how little of it we have. But in the Oort Cloud, time is generous. It stretches and breathes. It allows for stillness. A comet that leaves today will not return for millions of years, yet when it does, the same sun will be waiting for it, burning just as it has since the beginning. In that sense, the Oort Cloud is not separate from us but a reflection of what we have forgotten. That time is not our enemy. It is simply the space in which we exist. If you could listen to the Oort Cloud, you might hear the slow pulse of its rhythm, not as sound, but as a feeling, a steady vibration that fills the dark. It is the rhythm of gravity and patience, of motion too vast to perceive, of orbits too long to comprehend. It is the heartbeat of the solar system, quiet and eternal. The comets that fall inward are its breaths, exhaled across the eons. The space between them is its sleep. Together they form a balance that never breaks, no matter how much time passes. So much of the Oort Cloud's beauty lies in this relationship with time. It shows that eternity is not empty, but alive. It moves, slowly and endlessly, with purpose that does not need to hurry. From Earth, we see only the brief flare of a comet before it fades. But behind that light is an entire lifetime of quiet travel, a patience beyond imagination. The Oort Cloud teaches us that the universe is never still, only calm, and that even in the coldest, darkest places, time continues to unfold like a soft breath, infinite and serene. There are some who look at the Oort Cloud and see only emptiness, a faint halo of frozen debris circling in the dark. But what seems like a forgotten boundary might, in truth, be one of the solar system's quiet protectors. Its distance and density create a veil that softens the blows of the galaxy. For billions of years, the Oort Cloud has acted as both a memory and a shield, absorbing stray comets and interstellar wanderers, reducing the number of collisions that might otherwise have reached the planets. It is not a wall that blocks danger completely, but a cushion of motion and gravity that shapes how the solar system interacts with the wider galaxy. Whenever a star passes near enough to disturb the cloud, its gravity stirs the outer regions like wind across still water. Some of the icy fragments are nudged inward, but many more are simply redirected, their orbits bending and their energy dissipating in ways that help absorb the disturbance. The cloud moves with a flexibility that keeps it intact, its countless members adjusting their paths in a slow, graceful choreography that balances the pull of the sun with the push of the stars. In this sense, the Oort Cloud is less like a fragile structure and more like a living skin, responsive and resilient. Its existence may have helped preserve the delicate conditions that allowed life to flourish on Earth. In the early solar system, when collisions were frequent and violent, countless comets rained down upon the young planets. Some of these brought water and organic compounds, but too many could have erased those early beginnings. Over time, as the Oort Cloud settled into its vast spherical shape, it began to absorb and scatter many of those wandering bodies, keeping the rate of impacts manageable. It allowed Earth's surface to cool and oceans to remain, offering a kind of long-distance protection that no one could have planned, but that the universe quietly provided. Even now, the Oort Cloud acts as a buffer between the Sun and the interstellar environment. Beyond its outermost edge, the galaxy hums with radiation, cosmic rays, and interstellar dust. These forces press against the heliosphere, the invisible bubble of solar wind that shields the inner planets. The Oort Cloud, though it floats within the far reaches of that bubble, helps to distribute the gravitational balance, stabilizing the system's outermost regions. It is a borderland that catches and slows what might otherwise strike with speed and force. Every so often, a disturbance does send a comet inward, but even this process serves a purpose. Those rare travelers bring with them the materials that once shaped life. They remind us that protection and renewal are often part of the same pattern. The Oort Cloud does not keep the solar system sealed away from the galaxy. It moderates the exchange. It allows enough to enter to keep the inner worlds connected to the greater cosmos, while ensuring that the Sun's family is not overwhelmed by it. If you imagine the solar system as a fragile light glowing in a vast dark sea, the Oort Cloud is the gentle mist that surrounds it. It softens what passes through, bending the forces of the galaxy into forms that the inner planets can survive. Its silence hides a remarkable act of balance, an ancient harmony between chaos and stability. Nothing about its existence is deliberate, and yet its effect is profound. In this way, the Oort Cloud reminds us that safety in the universe is not always about barriers or strength. Sometimes, it is about grace. The cloud moves slowly, constantly adjusting to the subtle influences of stars and gravity, absorbing the universe's energy without resistance. It endures not by holding still but by yielding in rhythm. For every comet that falls inward, there are thousands more that shift and sway, maintaining the shape of the solar system's invisible shield. If the solar system had a heartbeat, the Oort Cloud would be its outer pulse, felt in the faintest gravitational tremors at the edge of sunlight. It is the guardian we cannot see, the calm frontier that protects through patience rather than power. And though we may never reach it, its quiet presence touches us all. The gentle rain of comets that once delivered life's ingredients, the balance of forces that keeps our world stable, the enduring calm of the skies, all these are gifts from that distant halo. The Oort Cloud may lie in the darkness, but in its stillness it has watched over us from the beginning, keeping its endless, faithful vigil at the edge of forever. Not every fragment of the Oort Cloud was born beneath the light of our Sunday. Some of its distant wanderers may have once belonged to other stars, carried here long ago during the restless migrations of the early galaxy. When the sun was young, it was not alone. It was born from a vast cloud of gas and dust that gave rise to many stars at once, siblings that drifted close together in their first few million years. Their gravity intertwined, tugging at one another's disks, trading material in quiet exchanges that lasted longer than any human history. It was during that ancient time that the sun may have gathered its first foreign guests, icy travelers flung from neighboring systems and captured into its growing family. In that era, the boundaries between stars were softer than they are now. The infant sun shared its nursery with hundreds of others, each surrounded by swirling rings of gas, rock, and ice. These young systems often passed near one another, their edges brushing gently like ripples in a pond. When one star's gravity disturbed another's disk, it could fling icy fragments outward into the open. Some of those fragments drifted freely through space until they were caught by another star's pull. This cosmic mingling went on quietly for eons, and from it, the Oort Cloud may have been born not as a solitary creation but as a gathering of shared memories. Each fragment within it could tell a story that began under a different sky. Scientists who study the composition of comets have found hints that this might be true. Some show chemical signatures that differ subtly from what would be expected if they had formed near the sunday. The ratios of certain isotopes, the balance of water and carbon compounds, even the dust trapped within their ices all whisper of other origins. These are the clues of distant ancestry, traces of a time when the galaxy was a place of shared creation rather than separation. The Oort Cloud may therefore be one of the most cosmopolitan regions in existence, a collection of travelers from many suns who now orbit together in quiet unity. It is a comforting thought that our solar system carries pieces of other worlds. Somewhere among the dark and frozen orbits, there may be fragments of material that once circled a star half a galaxy away. Those fragments have seen different skies, felt different warmth, and then drifted across the ages until they found a home within the sun's gravity. They remind us that the universe does not respect the boundaries we imagine. What we call ours is always shared, and what we call foreign is always connected. The Oort Cloud is the proof of that shared belonging, a gentle reminder that even the most distant parts of our solar system were shaped by encounters with others. The exchange goes both ways. Just as the sun once captured foreign material, it likely sent its own fragments outward, releasing icy debris that now drifts between the stars. Somewhere, another star's Oort Cloud may contain pieces that once belonged to us. In this way, the galaxy maintains an eternal cycle of giving and receiving. Over time, the orbits of stars and clouds overlap, and the distinction between one system and another becomes beautifully blurred. The comets that fall toward the sun may carry memories of other skies, but when they return to the dark, they leave behind traces of our own. If you could stand at the outermost edge of the Oort Cloud and look outward, you would see the Milky Way spread across the sky like a luminous river. Each star in that river might be carrying its own faint halo of debris, some of it born from the same ancient interactions that built ours. The space between those halos is not empty. It is filled with the faint dust of shared history, drifting between suns, waiting to be gathered again. The thought of this quiet exchange is a kind of comfort. It suggests that nothing in the universe is ever truly lost. The material that once belonged to one star may someday help form the planets of another. The same carbon that burns in our bodies may once have circled a distant sunday. The Oort Cloud stands as the meeting place of these stories, a silent archive where the gifts of countless worlds have come to rest. It is a border that unites rather than divides, a reminder that creation is not a single event but an endless sharing. Somewhere, in the darkness beyond sight, those foreign fragments still move, circling our sun in patient arcs. They are as much a part of us as the worlds we can see, carrying within them the memory of other beginnings. And though we may never reach them, their presence is enough to remind us that the story of our solar system is also the story of the galaxy itself, a tale of countless stars exchanging pieces of their light, until even the most distant corners of space become one continuous home. The sun will not burn forever. Like every star, it will one day begin to change, growing larger and redder as it ages, until its light softens and its warmth spreads outward through the solar system. Long before that happens, life on Earth will have already faded, but the Oort Cloud will still be there, patient and cold, circling at the edge of what remains. It has always moved slowly, and so it will not notice the passing of eons. It will only feel the faint difference in light, the gentle deepening of the sun's hue as it transforms into something new. When that transformation comes, the balance of the solar system will begin to shift. The sun's outer layers will expand, and its gravity will weaken slightly as it sheds its mass into space. The planets will drift outward, their orbits loosening as though taking a long breath. The Oort cloud will feel this change as a whisper first, a subtle easing of the pull that has held it for billions of years. Some of its comets will break free, released to wander the galaxy as solitary travelers. Others will remain, still bound to the fading sun, circling in their slow and ancient rhythm. As the sun brightens into its final, swollen stage, its warmth will reach farther than it ever has before. Yet even then, the Oort cloud will remain untouched by heat. The distance is too great, the light too thin to melt the ancient ice. The frozen worlds there will continue to turn in silence, watching the glow of their parent star transform from white to gold to deep crimson. They will not burn, they will not even shine. They will endure, as they always have, through the quiet changes of the cosmos. When the sun's final light begins to fade, and it contracts into a white dwarf, the Oort cloud will become a ghostly echo of what once was. The gravity that held it together will be weaker now, and the gentle tides of the galaxy will begin to pull at its edges. The smallest fragments will slip away first, drawn toward other stars or lost to the spaces between them. Over millions of years, more and more of the cloud will scatter, until what remains is only a faint trace of what was once the solar system's outermost veil. Yet this will not be an ending. It will be a transformation, one more exchange in the long story of creation. Some of the icy wanderers that leave the Oort cloud will carry the memory of the sun with them. They will drift through the galaxy, perhaps captured one day by another star. Around those new suns, they might join other clouds, other halos of frozen time, and their materials will mingle with those from distant worlds. The water and carbon locked within them will find new homes, becoming part of new planets, new oceans, perhaps even new lives. In this way, the Oort cloud will continue long after the sun is gone, its pieces woven into the fabric of other stars. It is a comforting thought that the sun's farewell will not be an abrupt silence, but a quiet dispersal. The Oort cloud will become the sun's final gesture, a scattering of gifts into the galaxy. Each tiny world that escapes into the dark will carry a part of our system's history, the same water that once fell as rain on Earth, the same dust that once floated through the nebula that formed the planets. Long after the sun's light has faded, those fragments will still glow faintly in the reflection of other stars. Even as it dissolves, the Oort cloud will remain a bridge between what was and what will be. Its slow unraveling will feed the galaxy's cycle of renewal, returning the building blocks of life to the cosmic sea. Perhaps, somewhere far away, on a world not yet born, the dust of our own Oort cloud will settle once more, giving rise to something new. The sun's story, and ours, will continue not as light, but as matter shared among the stars. In the end, the Oort cloud will do what it has always done. It will drift quietly, patient and unhurried, following the slow rhythm of the universe. The sun will fade to a dim white ember, and the Oort cloud will carry on, no longer bound by one star, but free among many. Its fragments will wander through eternity, turning endlessly beneath the cold light of other suns, and though no one will see them, they will remain, the last whisper of a system that once was bright. The Oort cloud will not vanish. It will simply join the rest of the galaxy, its silence transformed into continuation, its stillness into forever. The Oort Cloud is not an ending. It is a resting place, a long pause between one chapter of the universe and the next. It circles the sun like a memory that refuses to fade, stretching far beyond the planets and the warmth of sunlight, existing in a realm where time itself seems to hold its breath. If the solar system were a song, the Oort Cloud would be its final note, lingering softly in the air long after the melody has stopped. It is the lullaby that closes the story of creation, the quiet heartbeat that continues long after the light has dimmed. Every world within the solar system was shaped by motion and heat, by the restless dance of matter drawn toward the Sunday. But the Oort Cloud was shaped by stillness. It is the solar system's sleep, a dream made of ice and dust. Each of its frozen bodies is both ancient and innocent, unchanged since the dawn of time. Together they drift through the dark like a billion tiny thoughts, circling patiently, whispering the same slow rhythm that began when the sun was young. In their silence there is harmony, and in their coldness there is memory. From the edge of the Oort Cloud, the sun appears small and steady, a single point among the multitude. Its warmth does not reach here, but its pull still does, faint and kind, like a thread connecting the heart to its distant past. That thread is what makes the Oort Cloud so beautiful. It belongs to the sun, but only barely. Each object within it is free enough to wander yet loyal enough to return. It is a balance between belonging and letting go, between gravity and grace. The Oort Cloud shows that even the farthest places are still part of something, still connected by invisible ties. In this sense, the Oort Cloud is not merely a collection of ice and rock. It is a symbol of continuity. Everything that leaves the inner worlds eventually finds its way here, joining the slow drift of the sun's faint halo. Some of it will one day fall inward again, returning as comets that light the skies of worlds that remember their own origins. Some will drift outward, beyond the reach of any star, becoming part of the galaxy's eternal dust. Nothing is lost. Everything circles and returns, each motion a reflection of the last. The Oort Cloud is the solar system breathing, expanding and contracting with the quiet rhythm of time. It is also a place of peace. There is no chaos here, no storms or collisions, no sound or violence. Even when it changes gently. A passing star may brush its edge, or the pull of the galaxy may shift its shape, but it always returns to stillness. The Oort Cloud endures because it moves with patience. It understands that eternity is not a contest of endurance but an acceptance of rhythm. The comets that leave are part of its song, and the ones that return are its echo. It is both the beginning and the end, the pause between worlds, the soft hum of creation remembering itself. If you could drift among its frozen bodies, you would feel the peace of its silence. You would see the stars in every direction, crisp and countless, and the sun would be only a gentle spark at the center of it all. You would feel no need to move quickly, no need to measure time. You would simply float, surrounded by a stillness that feels alive. Perhaps that is what the Oort Cloud teaches best, that even in the darkest, coldest places, there is a kind of grace that endures. Someday, long after the sun's light has faded and the inner planets have turned to dust, the Oort Cloud will still drift through space, carrying within it the memory of everything that once was. Its fragments will shine faintly in the glow of other stars, reminders that nothing truly ends. The solar system's story will continue through them, traveling outward, carried by the same quiet patience that has always defined this place. The Oort Cloud is not the outer limit of the solar system, nor is it its final chapter. It is the gentle breath that connects one era to the next. It is the place where the light slows but never stops, where silence becomes beauty, and where the sun's faintest whisper travels endlessly through the dark. To imagine it is to imagine eternity itself, not as emptiness, but as peace. It is the solar system asleep, dreaming of what it once was, and of what it might become again. So, as you drift toward sleep, remember that even at the furthest edge of everything we know, there is still connection. The Oort Cloud may be silent, but it is part of us, an invisible shell of history surrounding our little world. Every comet that visits our sky carries a story from that frozen frontier, a reminder that we are all made of ancient dust and patient light. Let your mind wander there, where time slows and the stars never fade. Rest easy, traveler. The universe is vast, but tonight it feels close. Share a quiet thought in the comments below. I'd love to know where you're listening from.